So just wanted to spend a couple of minutes on the different tobacco products that are out there. Most people obviously know cigarettes, cigars, clove cigarettes, these beady things, hookahs, and just pipe tobacco. Cigars, depending on how they're wrapped, some people think that cigars are better than cigarettes, but one cigar can be the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes. Clove cigarettes, there's the fallacy that there's no tobacco in them, it's pure clove. It's about 50-50, and in some cases it's even more tobacco than clove. So again, something that people might not necessarily be aware of. These are the things that you might hear consumers say, that, well, I don't have that much of a problem because I smoke clove cigarettes. So I'm okay with that. Well, they're not okay with that. These beady things are these hand-rolled tobacco cigarettes. And part of the thing is because they're rolled in tobacco leaf and it's all tobacco, is that they actually have to inhale deeper to get it into their lungs. So they're actually getting even more of the carcinogens with having to inhale deeper. The other problem with the beadies is they come flavored. And so they talk about beadies as being cigarettes on training wheels, because the flavors are mostly candy flavored that appeal to kids, and so kids will start using the beadies and then they'll develop the dependence and then kind of keep going with that. Water pipes or hookahs, this is something that I found fascinating, that Ohio has no indoor smoking, but there are hookah bars. How does that happen? Well, evidently within the law it allows for, if 80% or more of the profit comes from tobacco, then they set themselves up as a hookah bar and they are exempt under that. So you can't have a restaurant that has 80% of their profit from food that happens to have this hookah room in the back. That wouldn't be allowed. But if you've got a hookah bar where 80% of your profits and you have a couple snacks or something to keep people around, you can have that. The average hookah session, about an hour, is the equivalent to 100 to 200 puffs on a normal cigarette. So you're getting in a lot more, and there's a lot of health things that come along with sharing the mouthpiece and some of the other pieces that come along with that. And the same with pipes, you're getting the pure tobacco burnt into the pipe, and so depending on how tightly packed people will pack the bowl, which people tend to pack it pretty tightly, you're getting at least a cigarette's worth, although typically you're getting more than a cigarette's worth of all the toxins coming in. Non-smoke tobacco products, we're seeing an increase in the use of these, especially as more states throughout the country are going to smoke-free environments. So people are kind of switching over to the non-smoke tobacco products. So there's chewing tobacco, snuff, snus, and we'll talk about the other three on here in a minute. Basically, the difference amongst them is just the texture, how finely chopped the tobacco might be, and or whether it's moist or dry. Some of them will come in these little pouch things that people will put between the cheek and gum. Most people will then spit the tobacco juice out. Some people will actually swallow it, and so there's some implication for some esophageal and stomach cancers that can come from actually swallowing the tobacco juices, things like that. But this next section are these new products that I really handed to the tobacco industry, is responding to supply and demand and consumer needs, and with more and more places not having the ability to use tobacco indoors, they've come up with these phenomenal tools where people can use tobacco in areas that they're not allowed to. So if you look at the upper left-hand corner, you'll see what are referred to as orbs, and these are product names. So it's Camel has the brand of orbs. It's basically ground up tobacco in a Tic Tac. And so people are using tobacco, it's swallowed, it's not even spit, it's just swallowed down, it's candy flavored, and we're hearing, especially in schools, of kids taking Tic Tac boxes, emptying out the Tic Tacs and putting in the orbs so they can then sit in class and be popping these things and no one's the wiser. The other thing are the strips. They're like if you think of the Listerine little dissolvable things you put on your tongue, there's some cough medicines now that are in these orally dissolvable products. And so again, you've got this little strip that the person just can kind of slip onto their tongue and they're getting their tobacco. And then the final thing that we see in there are the sticks, and they kind of look like a cinnamon stick. But it's a similar thing where it's just ground up refined tobacco that's kind of compressed into this stick that people kind of suck on and swallow. And it might look like someone has a straw hanging off their mouth, or it might look like a cinnamon stick, things like that. So these products are right now being test marketed, and let's hear it for Columbus, Ohio, as being one area of the country that's the test market for these oral spit-free products here. But again, when we think about what folks might be moving towards, these again are tobacco products. So even though they're not smoked, there's still all of the carcinogens and the other tobacco pieces that are kind of put in here, plus whatever they need to do to help bond it, and so that they can swallow it and not be quite so repulsed. The other product that we've seen, and I get a lot of questions about this as I go around the state talking with folks, are these e-cigarettes, electronic cigarettes. And we can see that they come in different flavors. Some of them look like a cigarette or a cigar. You can see kind of the pictures there. And again, you hear the ads. For places that you can't smoke, you can use these electronic cigarettes. And actually, I went to a couple of the websites of these products, and one of them actually has, when you buy the packet, it comes with a little card that if someone comes up to you and tells you you have to put your cigarette out, you hand it to them, and it explains to them that you are not smoking a cigarette. This is an electronic cigarette that you are allowed to smoke anywhere you want, including airplanes, restaurants, etc. So just a little information about what these little things are. Electronic nicotine delivery systems, or ENDS. There's the cartridge at the front, and that's what contains the nicotine. Some actually have a little sponge that you can then buy a liquid solution of nicotine to soak the sponge. So you've got concentrated nicotine in a liquid that is then in someone's home that others in the home now have access to. There's also some great recipes floating around on the internet of alcohol and other things that you can mix in with the nicotine solution. So not only are you smoking the nicotine, but then you can have all these other things coming in as well. So again, people get quite creative. There's a vaporizer piece that heats the nicotine solution into a vapor. So it actually does look like you're smoking. There is a vapor that's produced that the person then breathes out. And it's the act of suction that turns it on. So it's not something that's constantly running, but when the person sucks on it, that activates that vaporizer and it heats it and pulls it in. One of the things is each of the companies swears that they've done safety and other testing on their products, but they haven't released these tests out to the public as yet. So the FDA actually went through and just purchased a few of the products that were out there and did some testing on their own. And some of the things that are interesting just kind of speak to quality control. And so when the FDA did some testing, there's different strengths of cartridges that you can buy from what they call high nicotine on down to no nicotine. And so the high nicotines tested anywhere from 18 milligrams down to 1.6 milligrams. So if you have someone who is used to smoking 2 packs a day and they want to get the high nicotine cartridge and they're only getting 1.6 milligrams, it's not going to be very satisfying for them. Conversely, the cartridges that are supposedly no nicotine tested as having nicotine in them. And so again, if you're trying to maybe cut yourself down, this is what we hear some people want to use these to help wean themselves off, or just when the urge hits. But if you are pulling in the non-nicotine cartridge, but in fact it has nicotine in it, again, it's not serving the purpose that you want it to serve. And again, it's just a matter of quality control. You want to get what you're buying. And so if you think you're buying no nicotine or you think you're buying high, it would help to have what you think you're getting. The other piece that was a little concerning was that one of the tests showed that this end product had twice the nicotine as prescription nicotine inhalers. So again, that's a pretty high dose coming in a not necessarily metered way. The nicotine is tobacco-based nicotine. So instead of pharmaceutical-grade nicotine, which are in the nicotine products, the tobacco base still has with it some of the carcinogens because it's the tobacco plant. And some of the stuff are the additives that we do to make tobacco palatable, but some of it is just in tobacco to begin with. So the fact that these products use tobacco-based nicotine as opposed to pharmaceutical-grade. And then the last point I wanted to just help people understand is what creates this vapor is this stuff called propylene glycol, which if you've ever seen fog machines or some of those pieces going, it's the nicotine glycol that kind of makes that little vapor. So people sort of have been exposed to it environmentally, but we really don't have any testing that shows what happens when you draw this into your lungs directly. So again, it's just some questions and things that we want to think about. So as you have people ask you, what about these electronic cigarette things that I keep hearing about, at least you can speak in an educated way that this is what we do know about them. And the main thing is just this quality control issue of you don't necessarily know what you're buying. And the last point is actually something I hear more from consumers, which is they fall apart. The actual unit itself can be $100 or more, and then you still have to buy the cartridges. And so it's expensive to begin with. And then if after one cartridge it falls apart, that can again be some difficulties for our folks. So again, just wanting to help people understand